आज तो काफी जने हैं.
ओम सहनावतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ओम शांति शांति शांति। श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पाद शंकरं लोकशंकरं शंकरं शंकराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वंदे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः। The sunlight illumines the objects and it takes the shape of the objects also. In the same manner, consciousness also illumines the things and it takes the form of the objects. This is what was said in the verse number 4. Vyanjaka and Vyangya. Vyanjaka and Vyangya. Vyanjaka means the illumina, Vyangya means the illumined. The illumina is like the sunlight illumines the objects and it takes the form of takes the shape of the forms. And in the same manner, the Jyoti Atma, the Atma also illumines the objects and it takes the form of the objects. In the same manner, here it's also said, Arthakara pradrishyate sarvartha vyanjakatvat dhihi arthakara pradrishyate. See, dhihi means the intellect here, the mind, the thought takes the form of. It's not consciousness only takes the shape of the object, but and it is that shape is what is called the thought. And everything is perceived by the consciousness only. Thought doesn't perceive, thought is perceived. But we can't say that the consciousness is not perceives. Consciousness only perceives, thought cannot perceive. Thought is perceived. And the consciousness is only consciousness perceives. Pradrishyate. Dhireva artha swarupahi pumsam. It is the consciousness that is the nature of, it is the intellect, dhireva. Dhireva means the intellect alone. The thought itself is the nature of the object. The object is none other than the thought, looking like an object. It is a thought looking like a thing. Dhireva artha swarupahi. Artha swarupahi means it is in fact, the object is in fact, the thought is only an object. Thought is of the nature of an object. This artha swarupahi pumsam, by human beings, drishta. It is seen. Purapicha means even before we analyze, it was perceived. It is being perceived by the object. It is being perceived. The object is being the thought. The thought is being the object. Even though they're all thoughts, but they look like objects, things, and therefore man gets deluded. He likes them, he dislikes them, he wants them, he disowns them, he buys them, he sells them, he enjoys them, he suffers them. He thinks that they are the objects. It's a notional problem. It's a notional problem. It is not really a real problem. And therefore, it is being a notional problem, it has to be corrected. And therefore, dhireva arthaswarupahi pumsam drishta purapicha nachet swapne katham pashet. How can a person see in the dream otherwise if the thoughts themselves are not the objects, how can you see them in the dream and also remember them in the waking? Because they're all nothing but thoughts. The intellect, the mind only is there. Everything was the mind. The smriti is nachet swapnaha katham pashet smarato va akriti kutah. You remember the objects, you remember the dream objects, because the dream objects are you have the intellect even in the waking state. Because you have the intellect in the waking state, also the thoughts also in the waking state, you are able to remember. And this is one explanation. How do you remember the dream? Even though you don't remember the dream, it is the consciousness that remembers. Consciousness, that is what that was present the dream also, in the deep sleep state also, and in the waking also. And therefore, and you remember the consciousness only remembers. The consciousness as the jiva remembers. The consciousness as jiva remembers the dream. Consciousness as the jiva remembers the dream. Consciousness as jiva consciousness is present in the waking, in the dream, in the deep sleep state also, in all the three states. And therefore it is able to remember the dream. It is able to remember the deep sleep state also. When a person says, I was not a non-existent, how you are not, you are non-existent? You are non-existent as the body. The body was not felt, that was not missed also. And therefore, you remember the body. You don't remember the body in the dream, in the deep sleep state. You don't miss them also. You don't perceive them, you don't miss them. And therefore therefore as the body you are not there, but then as consciousness you are there. How can you say that? Because after waking up you can say that you remember that I had good sleep, I had serenity, I had peaceful sleep, and I did not see these objects were not there. All this knowledge is there with him, and therefore minus that anubhava, minus that experience, how can you say that? And therefore even the absence of it, even the absence of thoughts cannot be registered if you were not there. And therefore as consciousness, as the illuminer of everything, you are there. As an individual you are not there. As the body you are not there. But then you remember everything. You remember the dream, you remember the deep sleep, everything you remember, because it's the consciousness that is there in all the three states. And therefore here it is said, nachet swapne katham pashet smarato va akriti kutaha. Vyanjakatvam tadevastha tadeva tadevasyaha. It should be Vyanjakatvam tadevasyaha. Vyanjakatvam, this, when we say that the consciousness illumines, it means only the consciousness illumines means it is nothing but the intellect illumines everything. Consciousness illumines the thoughts also, but it is consciousness only illumines everything, and consciousness itself is the material for all the objects also. And therefore that is what is called It illumines does not mean it is not the material. Syad akara drishyata. Akara drishyata means this. See, the objects are seen because the objects are seen because the the objects are seen because the drashta is there. Drashta, if drashta was not there, then the drishyam cannot take place. And therefore, it is both the material and the illuminer also. Consciousness is both the illuminer and the material. He is the illuminer, he is the material, he is the as like Sanya, like the water is both the material for the waves, it is the support of the waves, and it is also the seer of the waves. We can say, we can imagine it is the seer of the waves. In the same manner, consciousness is the material of the thoughts, material of the objects, it is the illuminer of the objects, and it is the seer as the jiva, it is the seer of the objects. And therefore, it is the sakshi, it is Paramatma, it is sakshi also, it is jivatma also. There is only one Advaitam, and therefore, the same truth is both the Paramatma, it is the material, it is the illuminer, and it is also the illumined object. The illumined object also is made of the illuminer only. The material is Paramatma, and therefore, as Paramatma, it is Paramatma. As Sakshi, it is Sakshi. As Jivatma, it is Jivatma, and therefore, one doesn't have to worry. Drashtutvam cha drishehe. So even though you are the consciousness, you are absolute consciousness. Even though you are consciousness absolute, but still drishehe, you see what is seen. You see what is seen. Without your seeing it, it is not there. Without if it is available for universal perception, but then first of all it should be perceived by you. It is perceived by you. What is perceived? Any object that is the only pramana that is an object for the object is that you perceive it. It is there because I perceive it. And if it is not perceived, then it is not there. Like the sixth element is not there. We say, why sixth element is not there? Because I don't see it. I don't feel it. I don't experience it. In the same manner, all the five elements are there because I perceive them. There is no experience that they are all created by somebody. Presupposing Ishvara's presence are the five elements, not presupposing his will, that he created and therefore they are there. That is all wrong. I see them and therefore they are there. Perception is the material. Perception that I perceive them and therefore they are there. And therefore it is said here, Drashtustvam cha drishehe tadvyaptihi. And the drashtra, the drishti, the sight, drishehe means the sight. Drashtutvam, the sight only sees. It is by nature it is absolute, but then it becomes the seer. Drashtutvam cha drishehe tadvyaptehe. And it pervades all the thoughts. Because it pervades all the thoughts, tadvyaptisyad dhiyaha udbhave. Whenever you whenever you see an object, arthasya udbhava, dhiyaha udbhave. Dhiyaha udbhava means when the thought rises, it is made by the truth. Thank you, Jay. It is made by the truth. The sight is the material for the truth, the material for the thought. Sight is the illuminer of the thought, is the seer, as the jiva, it is the seer of the thought, and it pervades the thought. Every thought, whenever the thought rises, the consciousness pervades the thought, and therefore consciousness is drishiki. If the consciousness doesn't pervade the thoughts, if consciousness were not to pervade the thoughts, then the thoughts cannot be known, because pervasion is important. Like the water has to pervade the waves in order to support them. We say the water is not supported by the waves are supported by the water. In the same manner, consciousness is not supported by the thoughts are supported by consciousness. Whereas in avidya, one thinks, I'm conscious because of the thoughts. If I don't think, then there is no consciousness. In this manner, the thoughts support the consciousness. He thinks in avidya. But the actuality is consciousness supports the thoughts. And that is the sight. Remaining, he is the absolute also, the truth is absolute also, the truth is sakshi also, the witness also, the truth is the material also, the truth is the illuminer also, and the truth is something that has having created itself entered. It is there in the eyes, it is there in all the senses, it is there in every cell of the body. Therefore, the self is there, and therefore the absolute, it is by nature absolute. What is absolute? And it is the witness of the three states. It is the experience of the three states. And it is also self-evident also. And it is self-evident also. It is absolute, it is Jiva, and it is Paramatma, and also it is also the Jivatma. It is Paramatma and Chinmatra Jyotisha Sarvaha. Chinmatra Jyotisha. Chinmatra means pure consciousness alone. Only consciousness. Chinmatra Jyotisha. The light of consciousness alone. By the light of consciousness, Sarvaha, all, Sarvadeheshu Buddhaya. Every intellect I perceive. Even others' intellect are nothing but they pertain to the objects. When I perceive the objects, then I have perceived all the intellects also. Sarvadeheshu Buddhaya. Maya Yasmat Prakashante. By the consciousness alone, they are all illumined. Prakashante. Every intellect is illumined by the consciousness. Whether it is my intellect or your intellect. Your intellect also, your thoughts are also illumined by consciousness. My thoughts are illumined by consciousness. I can say the same, it's not my consciousness, your consciousness. It is only consciousness. But in ignorance, we say, in Vyavahara, we have to say, that is in my consciousness and your consciousness. But consciousness alone illumines all the thoughts. Sarvaha Buddhayaha. Sarvaha Sarvadeheshu Buddhayaha. Maya Yasmat Prakashante. Maya by me, by consciousness alone. Prakashante are illumined. All the thoughts are illumined by consciousness, and therefore I'm sorry. क्या करूं जी?
पानी होता तो क्या नहीं पंखा से मैं तो वैसे बाहर पंखा से वो इसका बटन कहाँ वो बंद
So, all intellects pertain to the objects, and those objects I am seeing, and therefore I can say I am aware of. Everybody's thoughts are objectifiable. Objectifiable not by my consciousness. When there is no mindness is not there, and there is no hisness is not there. There is only consciousness. Hisness and mindness, everything disappears. Like in the deep sleep state, it has laya. Mindness has laya, first person, second person, third person, everything has resolution in the deep state, and therefore one doesn't have to think that they don't disappear. Jivatvam disappears, only Paramatma remains, and therefore Chinmatra Jyotisha Sarvaha Sarvadeheshu Buddhayaha Maya Yasmat Prakashante Sarvasya Atma Yatohyaham Tatohyaham. I am the self of all. Consciousness is the self of all. Consciousness being the self, consciousness is the illuminer of everybody's thoughts. Consciousness is the self of all. Aham means consciousness. Aham does not mean a particular individual. Aham means consciousness only. Consciousness is the truth. Even Bhagavan, when Bhagavan says aham aham ahamiti, that should be taken as consciousness. Sarvascha muridi sannivishta. Bhagavan Krishna says, I have entered. One individual can't enter another individual. Every individual is only an individual. It is only the absolute that has entered the individual. It is the absolute that is there as the swarupa, as the actuality of the individual. The absolute is the actuality of the individual. And therefore, when Bhagavan says, I am there in the heart of everybody, he is not, as an individual, he is not there. As the body is not there. As consciousness, he is there. In every heart, as consciousness, he is there. And that consciousness is what is called Bhagavan Krishna. When we say Bhagavan Krishna, it is not the body of his that is called Krishna, it is the consciousness. And therefore, Krishna as an individual is no longer there. Krishna as consciousness is very much there. And that consciousness is what is called Ishvara. That is why it is said, Sarvasya Atma Tatohyaham. Aham means the consciousness is indeed the self of all, the self of all individuals. The individual has the Paramatma as the Swarupa. Paramatma doesn't have the individual as the Swarupa. Paramatma doesn't have his Swarupa, his actuality. Paramatma is the actuality. Paramatma doesn't have the actuality. Like water is the actuality of the waves. We can't say wave is the actuality of the water. We can't say the wave is the actuality of the water. The actuality of the wave is water. In the same manner here also, the actuality of Jivatma is Paramatma. Paramatma's actuality is not Jivatma. Paramatma has no actuality. Paramatma is the actuality. And that is what is said here. Maya yasmat prakashante. And every thought is illumined by consciousness only. Whether it is my thoughts or your thoughts, thoughts are illumined by consciousness. You can't silence the thoughts. As long as you are a jiva, thoughts will be there. You can't control them. And the thoughts will run here and there. And therefore, samshayam mahabaho, samshayam mahabaho, mano durnigraham chalam. My mind is something that is durnigri, difficult to control, and it is ever fleeting. And therefore, the mind cannot be controlled. And therefore, as long as the mind is there, the jivatma will suffer, will enjoy also. What is enjoyed is only the silence. When the thought is quiet, you enjoy it. When the thought is disturbed, you suffer it. The distraction you suffer, and the silence you enjoy. And therefore, that silence is the swarupa, the actuality of the consciousness. The actuality of consciousness, the actuality of Jivatma is the absolute. And therefore, here it is said, Tatha yasmat prakashante, Tatha yasmat prakashante, sarvasya atma tatohyaham. Maya yasmat prakashante. All thoughts are illumined by consciousness, and therefore the consciousness is the truth of all individuals. Consciousness, therefore, that is why I say again and again in every class, that is why I say that you always contemplate that I am solely consciousness. I am not a blend of both consciousness and matter. Matter is made of me, but I'm not blended with it. I am solely consciousness. Just as it's not the wave is not a water is not a blend of waterness and waveness. Water is only water, but water is a material for the waves. In the same manner, here also, you are not a blend of both matter and consciousness. You are only solely consciousness. And kevala chetanaha. You are only solely consciousness. This is what you have to reflect. And you are not matter. And you are solely consciousness. And therefore, maya yasmat prakashante sarvasya atma tato hyaham. Aham is the consciousness, and therefore atma, consciousness is the self of all. Consciousness is the actuality of all. To be solely consciousness alone is the actuality. Matter is made of consciousness. And body is made of consciousness. We think that the atma is locked up in the body. That is wrong place. Consciousness is not locked up in the body. The body is made of consciousness. The body is confined to consciousness. Consciousness is not confined to the body. The body is confined to consciousness. Like the wave is confined to water, the water is not confined to the wave. Which wave are you confined to? It is free. It is in between the waves also. And therefore, it is not confined to any waves. Similarly, consciousness is not confined to any body. The body is confined to consciousness. It cannot exist without consciousness. Consciousness conscious can exist without the body, but the body cannot exist without presupposing the presence of consciousness. And therefore, it is said, consciousness is the truth of all the individuals. And therefore, every individual, when he dies, you don't have to cry. Why? Because his actuality is Paramatma, and that Paramatma remains. And the Jivatma has a resolution, but that this body goes, another body comes, the same Paramatma. Paramatma it is the Paramatma that takes the another body. It is not the Jivatma. That is why it is said by Bhagavan Krishna also. It is the Naroparani Vasansu Jirnani Yatha Vihaya Naroparani Tatha Sharirani Vihaya Jirnani Anyani Sanyati Navani Dehi. It's just as the human beings discard the elements, discard the body, discard the clothes, and put on the new ones. In the same manner, the soul also, the soul means Paramatma here. The Paramatma also renounces the body and then becomes another jiva, takes another body and becomes another jiva. And therefore, every jiva is, that jiva, the previous jiva is gone. He is gone for good, and the Nam Nishan nahi milega. He is gone for good. When the body is gone, that identity is gone also. That identification that I am so and so person, my name is this, my form is this. This is all gone. Name and form are gone. And therefore, when a person dies, the jiva only goes, not the. That is why it is said, when a branch is cut, only a branch is cut, the cut branch dries up. The root doesn't dry up. The root always remains alive, and therefore the cut branch dries up. The root doesn't dry, and again it takes another branch. Another branch will come out. In the same manner here also, the Atma may leave one body and take another body. It doesn't. One jiva will go, jivatvam will go, another jivatvam will come, and therefore in this manner, one doesn't have to cry for that. Every jiva, just as that jiva is gone, I also will go one day. Everybody will have to go. Every jiva has to go, and therefore one doesn't have to cry for that. Karanam karma karta cha kriya swapne phalam cha dhihi. Every karta, the subject is a thought, the object is a thought, The subjectness is a thought, the objectness is a thought, and the instrument is a thought, the means of perception is a thought, and the result is also a thought. The pleasure is a thought, the pain is a thought, everything is a thought. And so the subject, the object, and the means, instrument, kriya, the kriya, all this, the act of perception, the perceiverness is a thought, the perceivedness, perceived also is a thought, and the act of perception also is a thought, and the result also of perception is a thought. The result of perception is only either pleasure or pain. The result is always in the form of pleasure and pain. You can't have a different result. It is neither pleasure nor pain. That kind of thing is not there. It has to be either pleasure or pain. There is no gray. There is nothing in between, and therefore it has to be either pleasure and pain. You can't say, however modern you may be, you may say, it is not pleasure and pain for me. If somebody, if some other country loses the country, loses the thing, loses the match, then it is neither pleasure nor pain for me. In this manner, people say. It is not like that. You will always enjoy. You always have the pleasure or pain. Either you enjoy the pleasure or you enjoy suffer the pain. You always have the pleasure and pain. It is not like that. That no pleasure and no pain. Every result has to be in the form of pleasure and pain. Tasmadato anyatha. And therefore, in the dream, every object is a thought, the subjectness is a thought, the means is a thought, the act of perception is a thought, the pleasure is a thought, the pain is a thought. They look like things. And therefore, here it is said, Jagratyevam yato drashta. Jagratya, in waking state also it is the same. Just as in the dream, everything is thought only. In the waking also is only a thought. Thought looks like a thing. And therefore, because the thought looks like a thing, there is a seer, drashta. And that seer is tasmat ato anyatha. And therefore, the seer of the thought is different from the thought. The seer of the sight of the thought is different from the thought. Thought is sighted. Every object is a thought only, and therefore you are able to remember in the waking state also, because you have thoughts in the waking also. You have the intellect, you have the mind in the intellect, you have the mind in the waking state also, and therefore you remember the thoughts. You remember the dream. You find yourself remembering the dream. You are alive. You find yourself seeing the waking. You find yourself seeing the waking. You find yourself remembering the dream. You find yourself remembering the deep sleep state also. You don't have to create a theory for a perception. The theory of perception is a wrong theory. One finds oneself seeing the objects. One finds oneself seeing the objects. One finds oneself remembering the dream. One finds oneself remembering the deep sleep state. This is what is important to understand, that you only find yourself seeing. You find yourself that you are the body. Then you can't have a theory. A theory is different from Vedanta ji. A theory is different from Vedanta. A theoretical knowledge is different from Vedanta. Vedanta is yourself. Your existence is Vedanta ji. Vedanta only points out that you are not there. It only says how you are not there. It only says. It only shows that you are not there. It only shows that you are not there. You are a solely conscious being. And therefore, the sight is something that is other than the seen. Tasmad ato anyatha. Ataha means from this. From the seen, it is different. It is unlike the thought. It is other than the thought, it is unlike the thought. Anyatha means it is unlike the thought. It is other than the thought. Jagratyevam tato drashta, tasmadato anyatha. Here it is said, yato drashta. Yato drishta, drashta tasmad atvanyatha. Drishta, drashta. Drishta means it is seen by the seer, and therefore the seer is different from the seen. The thoughts are different. All that is to be understood is that there is a thought. The whole universe is a thought, and you are the seer. You are aware. You are experiencer of the thought, and the experiencer is different from the experienced. This is what is to be understood. The experiencer is different from the experienced, and therefore the experiencer may be different from the experienced. You may say the experiencer may be different from the experienced, but then I have my pains, I have my pleasures and pains. What about them? We say that they're all there, they are there. When you don't understand that you are the seer of the thought, you are only the seer of the thought, then the thought troubles you. The thought troubles you. When you understand that you are not the thought, then the thought doesn't trouble you. Like like the water is understood as the wave. The wave is understood as nothing but water. Then even if you understand after that, the waves may be perceived. The waves may be perceived. The waves may be perceived. The waves are there, but then it doesn't bother you. You may perceive the waves, but then the understood waves do not bother you. They may be there. They may be perceived in the same manner. The pleasures and pains may be felt. Maybe the thoughts may be there, but there are understood pleasures and are understood pains, and therefore they are nothing but conscious. They are nothing but your being, and that having understood that, then there is no pain, there is no pleasure, there is only silence, and that silence is yourself. That silence is the actuality of yourself, and therefore here it is said, "Yato drashta, drashta tasmad atonyatha." We have seen the eighth verse. The eighth verse is over, and the next verse is Buddhyadinam anatmatva. Even the buddhi, all the thought onwards, the thought, the breath, the body, the senses, the organs of action, all of them are anatma. All of them are objectifiable. Anything that is objectifiable by you, anything that can be objectified by the mind, anything that can be objectified by the consciousness is anatma. The objectifier is atma. The objectified is anatma. The objectified is anatma because it is objectified. Anything that is objectifiable is anatma. The whole waking state is anatma because the whole waking state is objectifiable. The dream state is objectifiable, and the deep sleep state as one of the three states, it is objectifiable. As one of the as anubhava, it cannot be objectified, but it is as one of the three states, it is objectifiable. And therefore, all the three states are objectifiable, and therefore the objectifier is atma, the objectified is anatma. Buddhyadinam anatmatvam heya upadeya rupataha. And anything that is objectifiable has a heyatvam and upadeyatvam. Means it has a no beginning and an end. It has a beginning, it goes, it disappears and appears. It disappears and appears. Heya means here it is disappearance. It can be gone, and it can appear again. It has a srishti laya. Anatma has srishti and laya. Atma is not born, and therefore within Atma, it has its laya in Atma, and it has its srishti in Atma, and therefore Atma is the Srishti Sthanam and Laya Sthanam, and that Sthanam itself, Laya Sthanam, where everything resolves, that can't have resolution. Where everything is born, that is not born. Atma is not born, and therefore it is Buddhyadinam Anatmatvam He Upadeya Rupadaha Hana Upadana Karta Atma, and everything is born in Atma, everything is resolved in Atma. Atma being the reason, Natyaja, and that Atma is neither, it can neither resolve, Natyajaha, that Atma can never neither resolve nor can it be created. Atma is the Srishti Sthanam and Laya Sthanam. Being Srishti Sthanam and Laya Sthanam, it cannot be created, it cannot be resolved. Everything Anatma can have appearance and disappearance. Atma cannot. You are not. You don't appear and disappear. As an individual, the body can go. The thought, your thinking can appear and disappear, but you can't. The seer cannot appear and disappear. This is very importantly, and the more of it we will see in the next class. Thank you very much. Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you, Ji. And I was thinking, we'll see for some more time. Maybe next week I will announce here, because I may not be able to come here. I'm finding it tough to come here, and therefore I will have the classes. We'll have the online classes from home only. Haji?
Swamiji, you look much better here. You are more
Relaxed.
right here.
Right here?
Yes, Swamiji.
Definitely more bright.
Right. More bright here, Swamiji.
And relaxed about it.
Relaxed also.
Here I can come?
Yes, Swamiji.
अभी आएंगे जी, अभी कुछ दिन के लिए आएंगे, जब ठंडा पड़ेंगे तब देखेंगे.
You review the situation end of this month.
हाँ जी.
Not before that.